Hey, good evening, everyone. Just checking everyone can hear me well. Excellent. Thank you for joining us. There are still a few coming in, so we might just give another minute or so. But before we start, this webinar will be recorded. So if you prefer not to be recorded, please turn your camera off now, and please ensure your microphones are also muted. Okay, I think we're ready to go. So hello again, everyone. Just another reminder for those who've just come in, this webinar is recorded. So if you prefer not to be recorded, please turn your camera off and ensure your microphones are also muted. There are closed captions. If you would like them, please turn them on. And there is a chat function in this Zoom. If you would like to ask a question or have a comment or something to say, please pop that into the chat and we will wait for questions at the end of this webinar. There will be a recording link shared with everyone post-webinar, so likely early next week, along with a few useful links and a short survey to complete. I'll just let a few more in. Okay. Before we begin, on behalf of ACA and Smart Recovery, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands in which we are connecting from today and recognise that these have always been places of learning, teaching and sharing. We wish to pay our respects to their elders, past, present and emerging, and acknowledge the important role Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people play within our communities. I'm connecting today from the Turrbal and the Yagara people and acknowledge them as the traditional custodians of the lands and waters of Brisbane. Next slide, please. This evening, we are very fortunate to be joined by April Long, CEO of Smart Recovery, and Dan, sorry, Dan, just give me 1 second. I'm just letting a few people in. There we go. Excellent. So yes, we're joined by April Long, CEO of Smart Recovery, for the webinar, Discover the Smart Recovery Method for Addiction. April is a pioneering advocate for harm reduction and systemic support in addiction, drawing from personal experience with addiction and incarceration. With a background in law and arts, April made a lasting impact on organisations like Shine for Kids and the Smith family. April's leadership extends to prominent roles in the LGBTIQA+ advocacy and organisations such as First Nations Foundation and the National Centre of Indigenous Excellence. April has been a finalist for the Telstra Business Women's Awards and named one of Australia's 100 Women of Influence. We are also joined by Dan Raphael, National Engagement and Membership Manager at Smart Recovery Australia. With over 20 years of professional experience in addiction sector and 10 years of personal experience in addiction recovery. Dan has trained over 1,500 facilitators across Australia and New Zealand in the last 7 years. Dan's primary passion is challenging the stigma associated with addiction behaviours, promoting self-empowerment to support organisations and individuals utilising Smart Recovery Australia for positive change. Dan holds an honours degree in addiction studies, diplomas in integrated counselling and cognitive behavioural therapy, and certificates in community mental health, project management, health and social care. I will now pass over to Dan and April to begin. I'll just unmute you both. There we go.
Sam, thank you for that lovely introduction. I too want to acknowledge country. I'm joining you from beautiful Awabakal and Warramia country, so up in Newcastle, and want to acknowledge elders both past and present. Dan and I are really excited to share with you the Smart Recovery solution and the incredible work we do around the country. But I thought it was really important to frame up the current challenge, and I'm sure many of you on the line will be familiar with some of these statistics, but I think all of them together really paints the picture of why it's important that we do the work that we do. So we know that 1 in 4 Australians will struggle with alcohol, drugs, or gambling in their lifetime, and 1 in 20 Australians have an addiction or substance use disorder. And I was recently asked about the word addiction and its meaning. And for me, it's still a problematic word because of that stigma of the word addict. And I think we have come a long way in our country around breaking down some of that stigma. But for me, what we're really talking about here is any behaviour that somebody might be doing a little bit too much of, or perhaps not enough of, and it's having an adverse impact on their lives, on their family and their community. We know that 1 Australian dies every 60 minutes from alcohol, drug or gambling related harm. And we also know that 1 in 4 Australians living with addiction will lose their lives to suicide. And that's why we're really proud at Smart Recovery to partner with Lifeline, who are currently running 3 meetings around the country to really kind of break down that divide between AOD and mental health. And I really love that philosophy of no wrong door, and how do we actually support the whole person as opposed to segmenting their needs. We know a large proportion of people in the criminal justice space have a history of substance dependency, and that's why we run our targeted Inside Out program. So that's a program, you're going to get to see a video of what it actually looks like, that we run inside correctional centres, both here in Australia and also globally. Concerningly, we know it takes 18 years is the average time for somebody to actually put their hand up and say, I need support. I actually need to get some assistance with the behaviours that are impacting my life. And we know there's over 500,000 Australians who are unable to access help. And of course, we often hear about the economic impact. So $270 billion of loss of productivity. So these are all things that we're committed to addressing with our Smart Recovery program. I mentioned barriers, and Dan and I are both extremely passionate about stigma because it really does stop people getting the help they need. And that can be stigma around, addiction being a moral failing, something about the individual. We can see that, in our community, but also that self-stigma, that embarrassment or shame around, I don't want to put my hand up because I'm feared that I'll be judged. I'm feared that, I'll be treated differently. And the real pointy end of that is discrimination, discrimination from employment, from the health sector itself. And we know that problem recognition is another real challenge where people, in terms of the stages of change and where they're at, they don't have the tools to recognise that they may have a problem and they might need some support to get that lifestyle balance. The other thing that we're very passionate about at Smart Recovery is accessible services. So when we're talking about mutual aid and recovery, it's really important that we have targeted groups for people. It's by the community, for the community, so they see their story reflected. I really love this quote by William because it's really why we're here this evening with you. He says you have to actively go out there to find out about Smart Recovery before you're told about it. It's not the sort of things that GPs and practitioners kind of go on about. They definitely go to the old school. Everyone knows AA and NA because it's well advertised. And you're going to hear from Dan shortly around the differences between the Smart Recovery model and AA. And for us, it's not an either or. We know 30% of our participants actually do both, but it really comes down to the power of choice. So in order for people to choose what works for them, they need to know about it. And that's why we're really passionate about building the awareness of Smart Recovery so people can find the service that works best for them. If we move on to the next slide, I guess, a little bit more about who we are as an organisation. We're actually celebrating our 20th anniversary this year, but we were founded in the US, and it was actually a person in custody who was mandated to do AA who brought a legal case, to say it violated their right to religious freedom. And that's how Smart Recovery was born in the US, and it was first trialled here at St. Vincent's Hospital. We are a strengths-based self-management mutual aid program that addresses any behaviour. And I'm going to take you through the dominant behaviours that people come to SMART for, but it's important that, it's for all behaviours that people might need support. We do use CBT and motivational interviewing, which we're going to take a deep dive into this evening, apart from our Yarn Smart program, and that uses narrative therapy and the clinical stages of yarning. I'm not going to go into that because that's a whole nother webinar topic, but it's really important that we have culturally appropriate services. We are focused on harm minimisation. So that means that when people are coming to SMART, we are goal-based. So it's up to that individual to really set that goal for themselves. It's not abstinence-based. People may choose abstinence as their goal. We are research and evidence informed, so we have an incredible research advisory council here in Australia, but we also have a global research advisory council. So I'm really proud to look after Australia and New Zealand, but we have Smart Recovery in 31 countries and 13 languages. So we quite often connect globally and share our practice. I mentioned it's really important that we have culturally appropriate groups, but it's also important that we support the support people. So we have family and friends groups. We also have our Inside Out program that runs in the correctional centres. We have youth meetings and our Yarn Smart. And how we deliver these meetings is actually in partnership with over 100 member organisations who actually facilitate those meetings. So at the moment, we've just tipped over 320. So we've got 320 that are currently running around the country. If we move to the next slide, this really shows our program. We don't have steps, we have 4 points. And all of our SMART tools, which I'm going to take you through, are framed around these 4 points. So we've got building and maintaining motivation, learning to cope with urges and cravings, problem solving, and finding a lifestyle balance. And sitting alongside those for our Yarn Smart program, we have the 4 C's, and that's country, community, culture, and connection. And what we do is we design tools around these to support people during the recovery meetings that we run. If we move on to the next slide, as I mentioned, these are the kind of groups that we run, and it's really important we partner with the right organisation. So, for example, in the LGBTIQ plus space, we have facilitators from the community, representing organisations like ACON, Meridian, and they actually run the meetings because they're able to wrap around other support around those individuals. So, they may need some other support such as, housing, domestic and family violence support. They might also need some, in terms of the scale of support, some residential rehab. So some more intensive wraparound support that they're able to provide. If we move on to the next one, as I mentioned, whole range of different behaviours. Alcohol was still predominantly the major behaviour that people are coming to seek support. Food, internet and shopping is, a large percentage as well. And we are seeing, post-COVID and during COVID, an increase in those behaviours. Cannabis, 13%, methamphetamine, 13%, all other drugs, 18%, and then sex addiction or pornography addiction and gambling, about 6%. So, as I said, a huge range of behaviours. In our meetings, we generally don't have alcohol focused or cannabis focused. it's for all behaviours, because what we're really looking at is the behaviour that sits underneath that. There are the exceptions where there might be a gambling focus meeting that runs, and people can choose, what suits them best. In terms of the clients that we support, we have a huge demographic. 54% are men, 45% are women, 2% are Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander, and we hope to see this percentage increase with our Yarn Smart program. I've just seen a comment in the chat around when were these statistics produced. It's a really good question. These were done about 18 months ago. So what we really want to do is, track these and see, do our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander participant numbers grow? We now have 6 Yarn Smart meetings running around the country. 1% identify as non-binary, like myself, or transgender. Again, we have a huge age range, 18 to 65. And coming back to that question in the chat, we now have 10 youth meetings running around the country. So, we expect to see those lower numbers in the range as well. And 41 years is the average age. And if we go back to that statistic around the average time it takes to seek help, how much more impact could we have if we could get in there earlier? And if that average age actually goes down in terms of the people that we're supporting. And 66% have had issues with mental health. And that's why it's just so important that we connect up our service system. And 70% incarcerations are attributed to alcohol and drug use. So as I mentioned, we're in 26 correctional centres around the country. We really want to support people whilst they're in custody, but also whilst they're transitioning out back into community. If we move on to the next slide, I just will pick up on the certificates of attendance. So in that spectrum of justice-involved people, we actually want to stop people ending up in the criminal justice system to start with. So last financial year, we did about 2,000 certificates of attendance for people who had court matters. And so far this financial year, we've done over 3,500. So we're really working hard to keep people supported in the community. How do people find out about us? Their GP, their family and friends. They can self-refer or through one of those member organisations. And we do have a large percentage of people who are mandated to do SMART, or they're encouraged by their lawyer to get that assistance if it is representing itself as criminal offending. In terms of the meetings, we have them face-to-face, so people can go in to one of those organisations, or they can do it online. So just like we're all connecting on here, they join a meeting, and we encourage people to keep their camera on. But for some people, they may, that because of that stigma, they may be more comfortable keeping their camera off. And we're okay with that in terms of meeting people where they're at. In terms of our support that we provide, we train everybody up in our program, and that training goes for 2 days. And then what we do, if people, in terms of their own recovery journey, want to give back and they've got their behaviour under control, do that training and take over their meeting as a facilitator. So we've actually got that lived experience peer kind of training pipeline, so that, for a lot of people, it's actually really a good part of their own recovery, that they actually train up and give back to the community. So I love hearing those stories where people are like, I'm on track, I want to give back. And they get exactly the same training as a clinician who works for, Turning Point or Odyssey House. So if we move on to the next slide, I think we've jumped back to our clients. I'll hand over Dan now to really talk about the power of peer support and mutual aid.
Awesome, thank you, April, and yeah, great to be here with you all tonight. It says there's closed captioning up the top here, but sometimes it doesn't quite pick up the Scottish accent, so I'd be curious as to what it does pick up. Hopefully you can understand, and everything, the tech-wise, is functioning well. But yeah, peer support and mutual aid, look, they play a crucial role in smart recovery by providing them with a supportive community of like-minded individuals, and really understanding the challenges of addiction and recovery. And these kind of forms of support create a safe, non-judgmental kind of space for the individuals to kind of share experiences and their struggles and victories as well, and just recognize that they're on the kind of similar journey. So SMART groups and peer support groups in general, they offer a cost-effective solution for any organizations for a variety of reasons by allowing multiple individuals to kind of receive therapy simultaneously, and overall the cost of service provision is reduced. And this kind of not only alleviates wait lists and burdens of already overworked therapists like yourselves, but also foster a sense of community and peer support among all the participants. And this connection goes beyond just the one-to-one sessions, providing additional support outside formal kind of therapy sessions, and really amplifies and extends treatment effects we've found. SMART meetings, they really enhance long-term recovery because they provide individuals with the tools and supports to make these necessary changes, and moving kind of beyond the labels and having that mindset of having a lifelong disease. Meetings often really focus on the practical solution-focused planning, the goal setting, accountability, and access to kind of experienced facilitators who can provide valuable kind of guidance with, more importantly, the expertise of the group. Our facilitators make a real point that they are not the experts in this kind of dynamic. And the benefits mutual aid and SMART that we find is to say the validation it provides. When individuals can connect with others who've had similar experiences, they feel understood, accepted, which helps reduce feelings of isolation, shame, and stigma, and this sense of kind of community that can also help increase motivation and commitment to working towards these recovery goals. Additionally, having a network of supportive peers, obviously we know, can help individuals build that self-confidence and self-efficacy and their ability to overcome the obstacles in their week, in their days, and really start to try and achieve those long-term recovery goals, really. And the guidance and support from others navigating similar challenges, as we say, develops that sense of empowerment and belief in their own capabilities. I remember when first kind of came through my own journey of recovery and went into the professional realms of addiction recovery. And I always thought to myself, I want to empower people to make change. And now I'm kind of a bit older in the tooth and a few more grey hairs. I realised that I can't empower anyone to do anything. Heck, I can barely ask my kids to put their shoes on to go to school. So all I can do really is create an environment as a facilitator to help them empower themselves, because that's really where we allow autonomy and not dependence upon a program or a certain person. And overall, the power of peer support, mutual aid and recovery lies in the connections, the understanding and practical support provides to try and just overcome those behaviours and live a healthier, more kind of fulfilled life, and really fostering a sense of community, as we said, and shared learning. So the main, I guess, effects extending the treatment, social connection, validation, accountability, peer support, as I say, seeing other perspectives and ideas. And as we touched earlier, stigma can be one of the biggest challenges in engaging in treatment. And SMART meetings, they kind of normalize behaviour, no matter what the focus is. And it's more about how is it impacting you? How is it drawing you or hooking you away from the values that you want to live by? And I've observed a beautiful process in a SMART meeting time and time again. And one that springs to mind, just as an example, up here in Brisbane, up in the Redlands, I ran a meeting. There's about 4 or 5 people. And one of them across the room was a 19-year-old methamphetamine user, in and out of homelessness. And across from him, amongst others, was a director of a company, a very successful person. He was in his suit, he just come from work. And these two worlds normally don't collide in this environment. In fact, they would be very different connections that these two people would have. But creating that safe space, openly discussing stress and supporting each other through that group, the techniques and strategies, I saw this 19-year-old participant providing stress responses that have worked for him in the past. And the director of this company was taking this advice and actually applying them into his life. And I just thought, that's what we're doing, creating that safe, non-judgmental, inclusive, diverse kind of environment, such as a SMART group. And it was just amazing to see. I'll just quickly show you a video of one of our affiliates over in the States running one of the Inside Out programs.
Behind the closed doors of housing units all over Jessup Correctional Institution, there are deep conversations. You might say a bit of therapy. This is called peer recovery, and these men are getting help with everything from substance abuse to anger issues. But these groups are not led by social workers or psychologists. They're led by other incarcerated individuals.
To know that somebody knows what you're going through. Somebody can relate to you. Somebody that don't put you down because of what you're doing. Because they did too.
Facilitators like Mike have gone through extensive training and continue to go through hundreds of hours more to become peer recovery specialists.
For me, just to see them brothers receive this, and they love it. Oh, let me say, they love it. Brothers down there, they really love it. Because they start to realize, well, I'm not alone. Somebody else can feel my pain. Somebody else understands what I'm going through. Okay, it's relatable. So I think that right there helps us more than anything.
There are 40 facilitators holding sessions with 400 participants in over 60 groups. And there is a waiting list. They are changing a community by meeting for an hour and a half with each group once a week.
The men started interacting with each other. You know, we started to change the culture here. You know, that's decades of hardened prison beliefs, behaviors, attitudes that have been decades long.
Well, we might just leave that there. Really awesome stuff to hear from our affiliates over in the US. And as April shared, we're running into the program SMART in many correctional facilities over here. So we'd love to chat more if that's a real area that's interests you. Kind of reflecting on those cases, but from the correctional program in the US, it's clear that peer support plays a real crucial role in positive change. And we see that echoed in the mindset and observing SMART meetings in Australia. And kind of just really highlighting the importance of peer support in our 26 correctional facilities over here. And the shift is crucial in breaking free from that long-held kind of unhelpful beliefs of having a disease or even calling yourself an addict. It's something personally I've moved beyond. And I used to believe sharing my feelings and struggles and emotions was a sign of weakness. I also thought I had to admit I was an addict, and that meant that that would be me for the rest of my life. That's what we're taught. However, my journey of recovery through heroin addiction has shown me the importance of challenging these maladaptive beliefs, and I've kind of learned to embrace the vulnerability as a strength and seeing a different way of thinking, a different identity, a new direction, a new purpose, new relationships, and a life that can transcend behavior that once kind of enveloped me, you know.
I might share a quick story there, Dan, about how it works in practice within the correctional centres that we're in here in Australia. So we actually just trained up 10 women at Wandoo Prison in WA, and how the meetings actually run is that it's those women that run the meetings. And so I saw a question around about the comfortability of sharing. And so, you know, the officers and, you know, others actually leave them to those meetings. And it's really powerful when you've got that peer and people are able to actually share. And really excitingly, when those women transition out of that centre, they've now got a skill and can continue to run meetings in the community. So we're really working with our partners around that being a pipeline for people to be able to actually continue to then run meetings in the community once they're out of that correctional environment.
Yeah, thanks for that, April. Sorry, I don't know if my volume was dipping in and out, so apologies if that's the case. I'm just curious, just very quickly, if anyone's heard of SMART, or they have seen a SMART meeting, attended one, or even one of you has been trained in SMART. Please chuck it in the chat box. I'd be love to kind of hear if there's any. That's it. It's Vanessa. Yep, so a few who's participated, heard of them, referred them. Fantastic. Anyone trained in SMART? I'd love to hear. I'd love to hear from you as well. So let's understand the SMART meetings. The kind of 4-point program. It's not a sequential step pattern as such. The 4 key areas that we focus on, and we understand motivation is really key early on in that journey, but also when you make change and sustain change, maintaining that motivation is really key as well. Managing urges and cravings, as we know, when we try and help people look at the kind of triggers and the antecedents to them falling into those patterns and really trying to take some mastery over that and some agency over that. Problem solving. What happens if you've got a plan, if you've got an idea, how do you actually execute the plan? What does that really look like? What are the steps you need to take for that to build confidence? And we all know maintaining lifestyle balance. I would imagine we're all fairly well-rounded, accomplished clinicians. Hands up, who's got a perfectly balanced life? Not me, for sure. But I think that's the beauty of SMART, that the facilitators themselves are not sitting there saying, I've got this cracked, So participants in the program, they attend 90-minute meetings, and that can be adapted slightly. Some of Indigenous groups or youth groups can be 60, and it doesn't even have to be around a table. I was talking to Vietnamese and Bhutanese meeting facilitators today, and they say that it works better for them walking around the park. I was fantastic. That sounds like a great meeting that I'd like to attend. Nice walk around the park with the dogs. But individuals can attend as long as they need, or as short amount as they need, and the flexibility support just to work through these goals and whatever they want to achieve. And the structured meetings kind of follow a format, which includes a welcome, but then a check-in. So it's a very specific kind of, what brought you to SMART? What would you like to focus on tonight? And then when everyone's kind of shared that, they go into a bit of work time where the facilitator can utilize, I guess, motivational interviewing processes, them some tools, with the real commitment of the individual taking self-managing a plan for the week, and a checkout, which is really cementing those plans. And as I say, guided through that process through a trained facilitator, an individual commitment for the next 7 days. What are you going to do for the next 7 days till we see you next? I just want to provide an example, and it's not probably one that you'd expect. I can provide examples of heavy drug, alcohol use and all these different things that have come to my meetings that I've run. But I want to share with you that it's really unusual. Now, I had a chap up here in Brisbane. He was about 70 years old, and he came in at the welcome and check-in. He says, I've just been diagnosed with Asperger's. So I was like, well, sorry to hear that, and I showed some empathy around that. But then I said, this is a program that focuses on behaviours of concern, some addictive behaviours. Is there anything that you find that around that area? And he said, yes, I'm addicted to Sudoku, the numbers puzzle game. And inside I'm like, oh no, we've got one of those. It's going to be interesting. But obviously I'm not utmost professional. I didn't, I said, okay. And we carried on and trusted the process. Now, why I wanted to highlight that is through his compulsive behaviour that he was experiencing, he was working in a charity shop and he was hoarding and bringing all this stuff home, all the junk. And his house is just an utter mess, he said. And he says his wife's sick of it. He's really sick of it. And they're just constantly batting heads with him, bringing this junk home and in this fight. And instead of the 70-year-old man going to the pub or picking up, a joint or whatever it is, he would just take himself off to his study and he'd just do puzzles. He didn't even have an internet phone or anything like that. He'd just do puzzles. Now, as we can see in itself, it's nothing to do with Sudoku. We were working with this individual to really connect with his true values and motivations to want to get help. Now, what I want to just share is what his plan was for the week. It's not rocket science. It's very easy. It was very achievable. All he wanted in his plan for the 7 days at the checkout was to go home and throw all the junk that's on the dining room table just on the floor. Don't even sort it out, just chuck on the floor. And he had a meal with his wife for the first time in nearly 10, 12 months at the dining room table. Now, is that helping the individual solve all these problems around his Asperger's? No. Is it solving all these problems about his compulsive behaviour? No. His Sudoku addiction? No. All it is really helping him take mastery or control over just one thing that was valuable to him, and that was his connection with his wife. And we saw that progress over time, and he was able to engage in so many more different things as he just takes small steps towards achieving bigger goals, which was really amazing to watch. And we talk about harm minimization. I know a lot, I work with a lot of people, trained a lot of people, and I've been through different programs myself. And sometimes certain services are abstinent based. Well, guess what? Harm minimization is abstinence. It's the same thing. It's just one end. And sometimes people need support at the beginning and all the way through as well. So we do have people who have taken control and are managing certain behaviours, but they're coming for other behaviours, or they're managing and supporting other people who are just fresh in the door that need that extra help. So now, I'm not going to sit here and patronise anyone. There are probably CBT experts in this room, so I'm going to touch on some just in case some are fairly new and understand the process of in groups. So incorporating CBT, the tools, worksheets and strategies into weekly plans further enhances the programme's effectiveness, and participants are kind of encouraged in the next 7 days what are the harm minimisation goals, and empowering them to take positive changes and progressing towards longer term goals. And we all know that CBT helps with unhelpful thinking, identifying challenging negative thought patterns, beliefs, replacing them with rational, positive, distorted thoughts. Individuals can improve their mental well-being and reducing symptoms, mental health, anxiety, depression, yada, yada. The CBT also helps, the coping strategies, the problem-solving skills, why it's like highlighted in step 3 there. By integrating these principles in SMART meetings, you can promote positive, supportive environment with your peers to learn and apply these skills for personal growth and development. So setting clear goals at the beginning of each meeting. What is the point? Why are you here? What do you want to get out of here? And through the techniques, the goals, the specific, measurable, achievable, realistic and time-bound plans that they make and meet these objectives in concrete and achievable. Number 2, encouraging cognitive restructuring, encouraging participants to challenge and reframe negative, unhelpful thoughts using these skills and tools. Practicing mindfulness, incorporating that into that practice. And that's the first step to change, isn't it? Mindfulness. I need to be aware of something in the first place. And that's why I like step 1 of 12 step. What's the first word that's in the 12 steps? Admit. You have to have an admission or an awareness, and then you go through that journey of understanding the motivation. And fostering problem-solving skills, the participants really support each other, and we really encourage the facilitators to never, ever suggest anything. And this is really hard because all of us are very experienced and have so many ideas, especially if you've been through recovery yourself. I can easily jump in and fix, or feel like I'm fixing people. But we know we've got to avoid that. I don't want to just give them a fish to feed his lunch. I want to create a space so that they can teach each other how to fish. They can go and do this and be long lasting, because they're not going to have me as a facilitator there for the other 6 days. They're going to have to do this themselves. So providing that feedback, that reinforcement from the group, the behavioural shaping to encourage that positive skills development. And just the cognitive behavioural techniques, the approaches, thought records, urge logs, behavioural experiments, exposure to challenging situations. I saw in the chat box there the specific tools in AA. You might really need to delve into monitoring and evaluating your use and your times a day and what you're doing and how it's feeling and what you're thinking, what your responses are. And follow up as well is really key after the meetings. Now, this is more probably where it's created in that peer support, but it's every week. No matter what, I don't look and encourage anyone to even use the word failure. I hate it in my life. I either win or I learn. I either win or I learn. And that's what makes people successful, is they don't just give up. They just, all right, that was a crappy week. But you know what? I would never, ever have learned that. Hands up, who learns the most when they're having a great, fantastic life and everything's going well? Nope, didn't think so. So when things are really going hard, and we just create a space to reflect on that, it's really key. Does anyone know what the word facilitator means? I might stick it in the chat box here. You're quite a lot quicker typing than I am. Does anyone know what the word facilitator means? Yeah, it could be a group leader, a guide, some people say. Any other thoughts? Yeah, a guide. Well, actually, when you look at the Latin of the word facilitator, it means to ease the process. Not to fix them, not to tell them what to do, but just create an environment that eases the process of change. I really love that. And in SMARTs, they take a unique approach by adopting a person-centered method. As I say, I thought I was person-centered, and I realized when I started really understanding self-management that I wasn't. I was jumping in and trying to help fix people, and that really doesn't work. Facilitators are there to ease the process. This allows individuals to take ownership of their own journey, self-improvement. It empowers themselves to make these decisions. And traditional psycho-ed groups sometimes can place a heavy emphasis. SMART places a heavy emphasis on self-motivation and self-management by tapping into the values and needs of them. Talking about motivational interviewing, as I say, some being very, very well versed in this. And understanding MI skills as a facilitator is really essential, because it kind of helps individuals reflect and identify addressing their ambivalence. We understand that. And we know empathic listening, open to questions, reflective statements, of course, helps examine values, motivations, reasons for change. Yeah. And this approach increases self-awareness, self-efficacy, and a commitment to make these changes. So fostering that collaborative, non-confrontational therapeutic dynamic. Now, I use this as an example because motivational from interviewing for me is like a dance. And I'm not the lead, they're the lead. It involves a back and forth interaction between both parties. One is leading and one's following. Just like a dance, there's a rhythm, there's a flow to the conversation, and the facilitator being guided by them, supporting the participants to explore their thoughts, feelings, and motivations and desires. Now, in a dance, both partners must be attuned, don't they? Are you going to stand on some toes? You're going to some broken toes, and people are going to not be very happy with you. Similarly, in SMART, the group members learn to be sensitive to each other and each other's cues. They're learning these communication pickups, adjusting their approaches to help facilitate conversation and change. And if I'm met with discord or dissonance, or what some people call resistance, and I don't like using that word resistance, I really don't. But if there is some argumentation coming back in a SMART meeting, the first thing I do, I say to myself, I've said something wrong. I've stood on their toes and I've tried to take them down a path, or I've assumed something when I haven't actually truly listened to them and journeyed through them and let them lead the dance. So by viewing motivational interviewing as a dance, it emphasizes the importance of collaboration, empathy, and partnership in the process, and exploring and building motivation for change. Just as a dance, both parties must work together in sync to create that kind of positive and transformative experience. So we touched on 12-step. Now, I want to qualify this. I've done 12 steps in rehabilitation 20 years ago. I've delivered 12 steps, and I did a multitude of things. I think that's why it's so successful. Both 12-step approaches, SMART, are popular methods for seeking and overcoming addictive cycles. And the key distinctions, this is not an exclusive list, so please, I'd love to even hear in the chat box some reflections on some of this, but I'm just highlighting some of the differences that we have found and some people have shared with us. I guess that surrendering the higher power, admitting that we're powerless kind of process, sometimes for me, I got it in the beginning, but I realized that I actually had responsibility, that I actually had things I needed to do, and I wasn't completely powerless, but I could take charge of some things and take control and build confidence. The other set of principles around the emphasis on spirituality and fellowship, obviously there's some differences there. And on the other hand, smart recovery is like an evidence-based, science-based, empowering individuals to take control of themselves, and self-directed change could be harm minimization, just reducing or even just trying to moderate or avoid the harms of drinking at the time. So as we said, cognitive behavioral therapy, motivational interviewing, developing coping skills, setting goals, maintaining motivation. And while 12-step approaches sometimes in smart recovery may different philosophies, they both offer very valuable support and resources for individuals seeking help. Some individuals may find success blending aspects of both approaches. Ultimately, the key is to find a supportive environment that aligns with your values and your goals, whether that's both or one or none. There are nearly 30% of people who attend 12-step also attend SMART. And maybe the others don't know about it, but that's why we're hopefully here today and share with you guys. But it's about the power of choice. And people need to know that there's 12 steps and alternatives out there also, and make an informed choice at what works best for them. Just another little quote there, and it was someone's just reflection saying that they struggled with some of the other processes, but this made sense to them. That's fine. Some other people, 12-step, I've got a client that been one of my groups, been to 12 steps in AA for years, but now she was coming for gambling now and needed to address different perspectives on things. Now just touching on a little bit more, I'll hand over to April, but creating a safe environment, really key. The harm minimization approach in discussions, it provides a valuable opportunity for individuals to kind of take control of that journey and towards a better mental well-being. By being needs-led, self-paced, individuals can address their specific concerns at a comfortable pace that suits them without feeling rushed or pressured. And the approach helps kind of foster a sense of autonomy and empowerment, as we've shared, and just participate in their own healing process. Avoiding labels, stigma, the discussions, it creates a safe support space where individuals can feel hopeful, that there is a way forward, that there is a chance. And focusing on the potential for change rather than dwelling on negative labels or past mistakes, or reiterating all these things of the past and who I am and identity, individuals are more likely to feel motivated, inspired to kind of take towards a healthier lifestyle. And by focusing on the most impactful behaviour at that time, individuals can work towards reducing harm in a practical, achievable way. And targeting approach allows those individuals to prioritise their efforts and make measurable progress, and accomplish that agency. As I say, the practical solution focus on it is really beneficial, because sometimes you feel overwhelmed delving into the past trauma. Now it will come up, but the facilitators are skilled to contain that and encourage for them to self-direct what supports they need beyond SMART. And also people coming in and just feeling overwhelmed that their family just says, you need to be off drugs, you need to get a job, you need to get married, you need to have kids, you need to be all this what society says, and you're on the street just begging for your next meal. It's too overwhelming, so it doesn't matter. What's the small step this week that you can make? And so in setting those SMART goals, the individuals encourage, and this helps structure a realistic approach to their mental health journey and their addiction journey, and setting them up for success and be able to track their progress. It's really key. Lastly, cohort-specific groups such as men, women, LGBTQI, population, First Nations, culturally and linguistically diverse communities provide tailored and supportive environment for individuals addressing really unique needs, and kind of connecting with others, sharing those similar experiences. People can feel understood and really supported to improve that journey. I'll hand over to April for a bit. She's going to talk a bit about some tools, and then I'm just going to do a little bit of an exercise. So I'd love for you to be active on the chat. I'll keep an eye on that as well. But April will just share a little bit also here. Thanks, April.
Yeah, it's been great seeing the conversation in the chat. And we've actually had a bit of a yarn about the tools already. So really welcome the questions that people are asking. This is a screenshot from our website. And one of the questions asked in the chat was, how do I refer to my clients to be able to get access to these tools? And so there's two ways. You can download them from our website, or people can actually purchase a handbook, and that actually is a bit of a companion for them as they're going along to meetings, because it's got all of these tools in it, and they can do that at a self-paced. So another question just in terms of, you know, how much is a therapeutic impact? The research and evidence shows us attending 10 SMART meetings, but we know of people who, you know, a few meetings, some people attend for a month, some for a year. We don't have, you know, 90 meetings in 90 days. And Dan spoke to around the dependability. We don't want people to become dependent on SMART. And these tools really give people, you know, a way to do that at their own pace. And our facilitators are trained to be able to bring these up in group discussions, but people can also, you know, take them away for homework and do these, you know, at their own pace. So if we move to the next slide, we're actually going to do a bit of, as Dan said, a look at a cost benefit analysis. This is some of the results in terms of the downloads from our website. So you can see in March, you know, just over 2,000 individual downloads. So these are people who are, you know, downloading these to support them. They're either attending meetings or they might be doing it in their one-on-one work. And so you can see here, Coping with Urges is that light blue color, a really popular tool. A question was asked in the chat around, you know, if somebody's disengaged, what tool could be useful for them? And, you know, it really depends on the individual. But for example, a cost benefit analysis is a really good one. Doing the urge log, you know, in between meetings, or in between when, you know, you're doing some one-on-one work with them, as well as things like the lifestyle audit. So there's a huge spread there. And, you know, the good news is that lots of people are accessing these and getting the support they need. And they may or may not be coupling that with attending a SMART recovery meeting. But we're going to jump into an activity now and have a look at the cost benefit analysis, which would be great. See these in action.
Excellent. And it's probably a tool that you're very familiar with, but when participants kind of come in and check in and open up for the reasons to attend at that beginning check-in, they're already setting a foundation for meaningful discussion. They're telling you how their life's falling apart because of this. So they really start doing a cost benefit themselves, which is great. I take these initial insights and delve into deeper during their work times, exploring their values and motivations and barriers, and together kind of with the group navigate through potential challenges and work towards solutions. So the collaborative approach allows us to truly understand and foster that environment for growth. Now, I'd like to just kind of lead an exercise for maybe 5 minutes and showcase the tool that you might be very used to. And when I think about tools, think about for myself, I've come from a trade background many years ago. I think of tools, I think of a carpenter. I'm trained in building a fence, okay? And I understand when to utilize a tool and when it's time to switch to a different one. In contrast, in traditional therapy and SMART, we do not always have the luxury of spending extensive periods of time completing an exercise over a whole session for an hour, months and weeks. Facilitators use the tools for a specific goal in mind and move on in the discussion and keep it really brief. And I don't always require every individual to fill out a worksheet in our meetings either. They'll take them away and use the tools purposely and set them aside and use them during the week. So I just want to pull up a cost benefit here. Just want to put it out to you guys. Now, I want to make it relevant to you. So please, 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 the more you engage in this conversation online, the better. I'd like to complete a section of the cost benefit, like similar to what the conversation I would have in the check-in, after the check-in. But I want to do it around social media and mobile phones. All of you have mobile phones, I would assume most people do now, okay? So think about your own life currently. Now, we don't always get the opportunity as clinicians to reflect on our own behaviours, but it's important for us to take the time to reflect on the impact and benefits of our usage in a structured manner. So, and this exercise is fundamental to our discussions in the SMART framework. So I want to put it out to you guys, okay? Now, I'm going to start with the disadvantages. What are the disadvantages or the things you don't like about your current mobile phone use? What are they? What are you noticing? What are you noticing on the scrolling? Time wasting, okay? So they're addictive. I'm going to share some outcomes. Oh, sorry, that was Rachel. Any other? What else? Disruptive?
Not being present with my family. I think that can be a big one.
Disruptive to what? I'm curious as to, oh, I've got people writing on the screen here. That's really disruptive. So it impacts family. Sorry, my typing's going a little bit funny. Loss of connection. So that can be relations as well, can it?
We've got some great ones coming through the chat. Interferes with goals, triggers feelings of stress, aching hands. Yes, the thumbs going.
Oh, right, okay. So there's a physical response to that.
Yeah, disassociation, impacting sleep, concentration being broken by the constant pinging, all those notifications flooding in.
Yeah, for sure. Effect on body posture. I've noticed that as well. Even just my neck was getting so I'm just like focusing down on here. Absolutely. What other things? Amount of screen time. Antisocial. Well, that's funny. I thought it was meant to be social media. But we know this actually, there's the discrepancy we see in some of our behaviors. We think it's social and connection, but actually it's probably a little less social than we actually think. Doom scrolling. I'm not sure that's, I assume that's looking at all the news and all the horrible things that's going on in the world just to get some entertainment value from it. Isolation for sure. So many things there. Now, in SMART, I guess, like, it's not about looking at all of these and fixing all these. It's about honing in, and I've got to hone in really quickly. So if I'm in a SMART meeting, I'm saying, look, out of all those things, what's the main thing that concerns you the most? If you don't make change in the next week, what's going to happen? What are the things that concern you? Now, mobile phone use might have a longer impact, but if you can think of alcohol use or something, it could be saying things like, yeah, family is important, my health's important, my legal issues are important. They're all important if we used rating scales. Yeah, they could be rating that 10 out of 10 importance. Sometimes it's more about the importance, but the immediacy of effects. What will happen this week if you don't make a change? Well, I'm going to lose my job. So we kind of go down that rabbit hole of trying to develop that discrepancy and really hone in on the hierarchical value. It's the most important this week. And that might be different for each one of you. I know we've done a group one, but one of them might be more impactful than the others. Like, I've just noticed the small changes I've made in my phone. I wake up in the morning and say good morning to my wife instead of my phone now. Small steps, guys. Honestly, it makes a huge difference because she was just feeling like, oh, wow, checking the sports and checking my pings at 6 o'clock in the morning rather than engaging with my wife. So honing in very quickly, finding the main area and value for someone, because if you can focus on that and you look at problem solving around that, that's where you're going to see the most immediate effect. And if people coming out of addiction don't see a positive effect of change quickly, they ain't going to do it. So really, really, what's that main thing? Now, I'm going to ask you quickly, what are the good things? What do you get out of being on your phone, guys? Why are you on your phone? What are the good things that you like enjoy about your phone? So someone says connection. Well, we can see that can be true for some, but it can actually be the absolute opposite for some. So there's ambivalence there. We might have a slightly pre-contemplative group here that we're not quite sure where we're going to go with the change collectively. Oh, they're coming through fast. Creativity, stress management.
Overseas, it's a big one. The FaceTime ability to connect in. So connections coming through quite a lot.
Escape from anxiety. But we know that it can just create more, can't it? Some of the designs of You know, the refresh button were designed out of the pokie machines, that pull down button, that anticipation. I mean, it's really fascinating. We have some webinars we did with Dopamine Nation and Lemke in Stanford. Really fascinating stuff that we'd love to share as well. So lots of other things. I'm running out of time to write them all. But again, I'm very quickly honing in. Out of all these things, in the last week, what have you noticed you tend to turn to phones more often than not? Is it stress relief? Is it managing, escaping some unhelpful thoughts? Is it certain times of the day? Because if you hone in on that very quickly again, people might say like drinking was social, but actually no, it's not. But it's stress or escaping. And I realize I do it at these certain times of day and certain patterns, and we help them understand, because if you can hone in quickly on that, then that's where you start to plan. If you're going to do in the next 7 days, how do you manage stress? How do you connect with your family again overseas without scrolling on Instagram for the next 2 hours after you come off this Zoom? You know, how do you actually problem solve that and manage that? Now, I'm not going to go into this half, but they share different information. Let's not pretend taking drugs and doing things like that are good, or you wouldn't do them. So they need to talk about why you're doing it, because if you're going to take it away, something needs to be worth it. And the other disadvantages of not doing it, it forms a plan. You need to know you're going to have to deal with stress. You're going to have to manage anxiety, manage your time better, yada, yada. And the advantages gives us that hope and a vision for possible change. So hopefully a little bit of insight. I'm just mindful of time, and I'd love to kind of continue talking about that until the cows come home. But April,
Thanks, Dan. Another thing that's come up in the chat is, well, how do we refer people to Smart Recovery? And this is a screenshot from our website, which I just put the filter in of Sydney. And you can see the various meetings that have popped up. So one's an LGBTIQ specific one. So you send your clients to Smart Recovery website. So they then able to go find a meeting, and these options come up for them, and they can filter. So, you know, they might want a youth meeting, they might want a Yarn Smart meeting. So it's got that ability to help people find what group's going to be best for them. So that's the best way to refer people. And again, they can do it online, or they can do it face to face. I love this quote by Jen, and she says, "The harm minimization spared my life and health until I could make the decision for abstinence." It's really important that we share participant stories. You know, Dan and I can tell you how impactful the program is, and I'm going to share some outcomes data in a moment. But I think these quotes really capture from a participant, you know, what the benefit is. And so Alex tells us, "I know it was CBT based. I knew it wasn't disease focused." And this has come up quite a lot in the chat around how that can be disempowering for people. "I knew it was based on a shorter time frame." So that's that. Let's just look at the next 7 days. That's the looking at the last week and looking forward. And it was facilitated by someone who had done training. And that was one thing, the trained facilitator, that was a big draw card. So as I mentioned, all of our facilitators, whether they're volunteers, peers with lived experience, all get the same training. At first I was a bit, you know, I thought it was a bit weird because I'm not used to talking about my feelings and that sort of thing. But after the initial kind of meetings, I really enjoyed it. And it was probably my favorite part of the week. So that's great feedback from Logan. And that Olivia's quote I mentioned before around the pressure to talk, and there's been some great conversations around, well, how do you capture participation and engagement? And so our facilitators need to actually say that somebody's engaged, but they might not be, you know, talking that much that week, but the next week they might be as well. So it's about them turning up and, you know, being part of that group and contributing in a way that feels right for them. And Isaac, yeah, it's not like I'm setting myself up for failure, which I've tended to do in the past an awful lot. If we move on to the next slide, I love that people in the chat have been kind of anticipating what's coming up, which is around, well, how do we know it works? You know, this is a survey sample that was done of over 3,000 participants. And these were of our online meetings, which is a great way to capture data because a little survey pops up and they're able to fill it in. So you can see here, 70% strongly agreed that they felt welcome. And that's really important. We need people to feel welcome so they can actually then do the tool time and get into it and check out with a 7-day plan. And, you know, 22% agreed, which is great. I feel supported and understood by people attending the meeting, and that's really important in terms of peer support. So again, there you can see strongly agree or agree over 90%. I had the opportunity to contribute to the group discussion. Some online groups can be really large. The ideal number is about 10. And you can see here that, you know, 63% strongly agreed, which is great. When it comes to the tools and strategies, I took away practical strategies, ideas and tools from today's meeting to help manage my behaviour. So 52% strongly agreed and 32% agreed. So overall, again, 84%, which is great to see. Today's group's well facilitated. As a training provider, we really want to make sure if you're attending a meeting in Armidale or you're attending a meeting in Bendigo, it's the same quality, you know, and you're actually getting the right support that you need. Did people find the group helpful? 60% strongly agreed and almost 30% agreed as well. So it's great to see that. At the time, we were very interested in technical difficulties, and it's been great in this webinar. Touch wood, my internet doesn't drop out at this point, but it's been pretty good. But of course, that can come up in online meetings. And the question was asked around, well, yeah, how many meetings, how long do people attend for? We asked people, do you attend on, you know, actually coming along again, and 66% strongly agreed and 24% agreed. So, you know, it's not for everyone. You'll see 101 people strongly disagree, and we want to support people to find the right support for them. If we go right back to those barriers, it's accessible treatment and people finding the right support. So we want to make sure we can support people if SMART's the right fit for them. If we move on to the next one, this is probably my favorite. And, you know, we talked a lot about the structure and the check-in and the tool time, and then that 7-day plan. You know, 81% walked away with a meeting from the meeting actually going, I know what I'm going to put in place for the next 7 days. And that's really important so that they have that support. So it's great to see 81%. And that's that, you know, over 3,500 people who were surveyed around that. If we move on to the next slide, partnerships. It was great to see someone in the chat from Drug Arm. As a training provider, we partner with these organisations. Shout out as well to the Salvation Army, one of our Thrive members, I can see in the chat. There was a great conversation around, you know, moving from a 12-step model to a SMART recovery model. And that's something we're really proud of. So you can see some quotes here from some of our partners who, you know, have found that SMART really fits, you know, their clients and the other supports that they're running alongside, you know, everything else they do. And Odyssey House, I've got to give a shout out as well, because I can see that coming up in the chat. If we move to the next slide, there is actually a few quotes from some of our partners. And we've got Catherine Wright there from the Salvation Army. The one I'll probably highlight is Clean Slate Clinic, because this talks about that service ecosystem, and Clean Slate Clinic offer a digital detox program where people are able, if they're suitable, a lot of people are, to medically detox at home. And we've been able to wrap SMART Recovery around that program to ensure in the maintenance phase they can continue to get support, to share from each other. It's also a really great way for them to know if somebody might be struggling because they haven't come along to the meeting. So it's another really good you know, check-in and checkpoint for Clean Slate Clinic to host those SMART meetings. And they're up to 3 that they're running around the country. And Lives Live Well, we've done a lot of work with them to look at, again, we don't want to duplicate what's existing. How do we really fit in and support what's happening for people? You know, is it waitlist management before they go into residential rehab, because we know waitlists are really long and they're going to need some support? Is it that aftercare maintenance after more, you know, intensive counselling? If we move on to the next slide, I might get Dan to talk about these memberships and how it works for organisations.
Yeah, thanks, April. And over the past year, our membership program has experienced significant growth and fostered collaboration within a community practice. Our partnership with SMART offers a wide range of benefits, including access to tools, resources. There was even a mention of tools and participant resources that are available on our website free, also manuals as well that can be purchased with a pack of cigarettes, but I think most people buy vapes now, so but it's not that much. But the offers around membership, the benefits, accessing those resources, discounted training opportunities, facilitator support sessions, refresher trainings, a facilitator portal that has all you need under one roof to facilitate, and an ongoing evaluation and research opportunities where with the Research Advisory Committee, we're reliant upon facilitators and participants, obviously, or we don't have research. So additionally, we place a strong emphasis on training individuals with living expertise as well of addiction within organisations and volunteers to become community members. And our membership levels are designed to accommodate organisations from various sizes to facilitate continued growth and collaboration. We hope some of you might join us as part of this thriving community moving forward. We offer a variety of training options to suit your needs, so and budget starting your journey as this facilitator. Whether you prefer online, in person, a hybrid live training, we have a perfect kind of solution really for everyone. And there's a special offer, and I'm always about offers being Scottish. A special offer for you guys attending the webinar. We're excited to provide a 15% discount on any training that you're keen on. And if anyone wants to take that advantage, please don't hesitate to contact us at Smart Recovery on that website, on that email address. Pass over to April. We're very close to wrapping up for questions, I think.
Yeah, and we will have some time for questions. We've been trying to respond to as many in the chat, but really welcome people to come off mute and ask some questions. And yeah, use the chat function as well. But if you do want to find out more, you can, you know, follow us on LinkedIn. You can also follow us on Facebook, on Twitter. The email address there that Dan's highlighting is how you go about booking. And I did clarify in the chat there that it's a 15% discount. Oh, am I off mute now? Oh, sorry. Yeah, so Dan's just highlighted how you actually go about booking the training. So there is an email address there, and the 15% discount I did just mention in the chat comes off the prices that you see there. We really want to encourage people to be able to be trained up, and there are varieties. You can do it online at your own pace. You can do it face-to-face as well. But in terms of finding us on socials, I'm not sure if I was on mute then, but you can connect with us on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and, you know, we're always trying to share the perspective of facilitators, but also participants in terms of, you know, how useful the program's been for them. But that really brings us to a close in terms of what we wanted to share with you. Really keen to answer any other questions that people have in terms of, you know, how SMART might work in your private practice, in what you're doing, or how you refer people to us as well.
Thanks, April. Thanks, Dan. That was a really fantastic webinar. It's great to see the passion and enthusiasm on your side. It's very inspiring. We do have a few questions that come in. Anyone want to jump off mute? You're more than welcome to, or pop your question in the chat and we can ask it. Great
to see we've already had a referral through. Thank you. Fantastic. There's a question that was asked, it's disappeared now, but around the difference between online training, online standard, and online premium. Is that one? Really great question. So online premium is you get somebody like Dan live with you over 2 days, running the training just like you'd be sitting face to face. And online standard is pre-recorded modules and then a 2-hour session with Dan or one of our other national trainers. So we cover all of the same content. One of the advantages of the online premium is you get to connect in with other service providers and kind of have those yarns that you may not get to have as you're working through the video modules.
Okay, Jesse's got your hand up there, Jesse.
Yeah, thanks. I'm just wondering about April's statement during the introduction, where they said a little too much, a little not enough of, or something along those lines. It moved quite fast. Would you be able to flesh that out a little bit? Thanks a lot.
Yes, more than happy to. This was really around, the term addiction. And so for me, it's around behaviour and giving people the tools to really identify, what are the behaviours that sit underneath. And sometimes for people that manifests as doing too much of something, and we did that cost benefit analysis of the scrolling, or it might not be enough of something else, in terms of, looking at their lifestyle audit and going, am I actually spending enough time with my family? And am I spending enough time exercising? So that's why I really like that frame of, perhaps it's doing too much of something or not enough of something, and taking out that stigma and going, we're all human. We learn coping mechanisms, we learn behavior, and sometimes it's kind of unlearning that and replacing it with tools and being able to do that lifestyle audit and go, am I doing too much of something or not enough of something, and it being self-managed by the individual to make that identification. So yeah, I hope that helps.
Yeah, I liked the not enough of something. That's maybe the other side of the coin that maybe doesn't always come up in discourse. Thanks a lot.
Connection, loneliness, somebody asked about the 4 C's: culture, community, connection, country. Are we spending enough time with our feet on country and, in the ocean? Are we connecting enough, with the people in our lives? And so I think the 4 C's, my hope is that that's something that can enrich everybody. It comes from Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander ways of doing and being. But it's of benefit to all Australians to think about when doing that lifestyle audit. And we've actually developed that tool around the 4 C's for people to really think about when they're, am I doing too much or not enough of something?
Thanks, April.
Just commenting on something.
Oh, sorry, Dan.
Sorry, I was just commenting on some other questions there. The training that Jane Urbanic said, some facilitators may only have 2 hours of training. So the standard training is a 4-module e-learning platform, which can take up to 6 to 10 hours to complete. And then there's a 2-hour practical. But what I find is it's not just the training itself, but the ongoing support that we can provide that's sometimes even more valuable, those ongoing community practice opportunities and facilitator support. Because I tell you, you can do training for a whole semester at uni and you realize you're not very good until you actually start doing it. I was hopeless at managing cost benefits for quite a few years. So it's all about practical application, how we support you beyond post-training as well. So
Such a good point, Dan, because it's not you just come along, you get trained up and off you go on your own. You join the Smart Recovery community and you actually then have your own meetings with other facilitators to unpack, this came up in group, how would you respond to this? So we actually have a custom built facilitator portal as well, where all our facilitators are able to download the tools. And so there's a lot of support in that sense. A really great question's been asked about do you have to have lived experience to facilitate? Absolutely not. You know, what we have is a dedicated training pipeline for people with lived experience. So it's not up here on the screen, but it's $250 if you're with an organisation, and it's $25 if you're a community member. Absolutely, lived experience brings a lot of expertise. I actually have sitting here on my laptop a little picture of a university hat and a love heart that says lived experience is my qualification. But all of our facilitators have, you know, a range of different trainings. You know, we work with Aboriginal community controlled organisations, women's shelters, you know, who have a whole range of trauma-informed practice and other things. So we train you in the SMART model, and people bring with them so much, you know, into it as well. Oh, Brad's even put a screenshot there from our website around the training. Thanks, Brad. It's fantastic.
April.
Hi,
Hello
Mark.
there. G'day. I've got a question around private practice integration. I believe Smart Recovery is it's sort of like a volunteer-based kind of attendance type thing. So I'm just wondering around, like, I guess what the buy-in is from a financial standpoint.
Yeah, sure. So as Dan mentioned, we've got some membership tiers, and so we work with a lot of private practices. The one requirement that we have is you cannot charge for Smart Recovery meetings. They must be free. You know, there can't be an individual cost point for that, but a lot of private practices incorporate SMART as that maintenance. You know, they do it with their alumni. And so we work with those private practices to become members. So it's, you know, starts at 500 and it goes right up to 10,000. And then we, you know, train up your facilitators and work with you around how best to, you know, implement it as well. So we're very fortunate to work with a lot of private practices around Australia, which is great.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm very interested in this. I use a lot of the similar techniques in my private practice at the moment, and I'm currently at uni finishing my Bachelor of Counselling. And I've got to admit, this is far more intriguing to me. And look, I'd just like to know, because I'm so busy at the moment, I'm currently running a private practice and I'm employed as a counsellor as well. So I don't have a lot of spare time, and I'm always working on that work-life balance. But I'm just wondering how I would get involved at the moment on a base level, and then be able to increase as my time starts to become more of my own, obviously with study and work commitments at the moment being so heavy.
Well, I mean, I can answer that. And what we try and provide is an avenue for whatever works for you. Now, some services have lots of time, and it's part of the service delivery, and we'll help them embed that into their service. But as you say, time can be poor. So if this is of interest to you, there are, again, options for trainings that can suit your needs. But beyond that, we can look to partner you with facilitators that are already running, and maybe you're just someone that jumps in when there's holidays or once a month, or facilitate when you can, because we're really desperately not wanting to just grow it, but sustain the meetings that we've got currently. And sometimes it's just a case of once a month for 90 minutes, I'd love to jump in and co-facilitate, and we can definitely create that vehicle for you guys for sure.
Look, I'd be really interested, because I've just had a look at your, you know, where there's locations nearby here where I am, and there's not a lot around, actually, to be honest, face-to-face, especially in this area. So that would be something I'd be really interested in. How would I get in contact with you about that and talk about it a bit further?
Yeah, as I say, just reach out to that email address. I don't mind putting my own email address in here if it's relating to training or any membership or anything. Feel free just to email myself or the Smart Recovery team. I'll just add that in there as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I think Brad's got a question. He's got his hand.
April and Dan, thanks heaps. I've been waiting ages to kind of hear more about Smart Recovery. I just want to follow on from Murray's question about being in private practice, just to clarify your response to that. So as a therapist in private practice, if I were to be running group therapy sessions where my clients are actually paying to participate in group therapy, I would not be able to badge that under a SMART recovery program. I could use SMART recovery tools, maybe, but I can't actually say it is a SMART recovery meeting group. Is that correct?
Yeah, so one of the things that comes with membership is you get a license to the IP to be able to use that. And it's really important that smart recovery meetings are smart recovery meetings. There are, a couple of options that private practitioners do. So one is similar to like Clean Slate Clinic. They run what's called a closed group just for their clients. Other organisations will run open meetings, and some private practices do this as a way to, tell people about the other services and supports that they run. So that is the two models that we do see. But, you're welcome to use the tools, but it wouldn't be considered a smart recovery meeting unless it was following the smart recovery format. So it sounds like you just be using some of the tools. And
then could refer them on in a maintenance capacity to an actual smart recovery group.
Correct. Yeah. And we do see a lot of that because they're, lots of open public meetings, but some organisations really choose to do it as a closed group because they want to monitor those outcomes and look at, well, how effective is my other group therapy session or my residential rehab program when I partner it with smart recovery and offer that, longer support.
Thank you for a really good answer, clarifying it. Thank you.
No worries. I think Ben's got their hand up. How are we going for time?
We'll ask question, I think.
Ben, did you want
time for this?
Yeah, we sure do. Yeah.
All right. Okay, then. So, Drag, I'm from St. George. Just wondering about is there any research on the effectiveness for the group when the members attending the group will be mixed? Because out here in St. George, we if I'm going to host a group, I'm most likely going to have a 50-50 mix of Aboriginal background individuals and white individuals. So, and there's some level of hostility between the two groups in the local community here. Just wondering if in this situation, should I be hosting two separate groups, or because I see the benefits for them sharing their lived experience in this community, but I also have my concerns for mixing the two groups. So what's your experience in this?
The first point I would make is that Dr. Liz Dale, who's a Warramia woman, did her PhD on the cultural competency of the Standard SMART program. And there was nothing broken. A lot of mob have used SMART and got really good outcomes. And our current Yarn SMART facilitator, Sean Fisher, he started his SMART journey with the Standard SMART program. So what we've done is actually enhance the outcomes by putting in place the recommendations from her PhD and developing more specific tools. As I mentioned previously, I think those tools will be helpful for all Australians and everybody benefit from Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander ways of doing and being. So I think it's really around the group cohesion that you're talking about in terms of, is it better to run separate groups? I think it could be really interesting to have a yarn about being trained up in Yarn SMART. The requirement is that it is facilitated by an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander person or co-facilitated. So what we see a lot of organisations doing is they'll have an elder or a community member who's running it, and then it's being co-facilitated. So I think we can definitely, send us an email to have a conversation about that because, it would be fantastic to look at what are the benefits of Yarn SMART for your Aboriginal members. So that's something we love to have a conversation.
So it's going to be most ideal for both me and also Aboriginal co-facilitator to be trained in SMART, both of us. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And we have on website for anyone interested in the different trainings. So the youth program, the Inside Out, if you're working with justice involved people, head to our website and you can actually see when those trainings are actually running and the different training types. So I think we are out of time, but great question to finish on, Ben.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, April, again. Thank you, Dan, again. And thank you, everyone, for attending. It's been a really great session, and I hope you all got something out of this. I know I did. It's great to see the comments, and I hope everyone has a lovely evening. If you do need further information, please contact Smart Recovery. Dan's popped his email in the chat, or you can use the information we'll send following the webinar. So once again, thank you and have a great night.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Bye, Simon. Bye, Tim.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.